The massive chamber fell silent as Admiral Zex Thara activated the holographic display. Thousands of star systems appeared in the air above the council table, each one marked with different colored lights. Red meant conquered territory. Blue showed allied worlds. Yellow indicated neutral space. And green marked the targets. Council members. The Admiral's voice echoed through the hall. We have identified our next expansion zone. The Hegemony Council represented 12 of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. They had been expanding their territory for over 3,000 years. Every world they conquered brought more resources, more workers, and more space for their growing populations. It was a system that worked perfectly. Admiral Zex Thara pointed at a small yellow star near the edge of the galaxy. This system contains a Class 3 civilization on the third planet. They call themselves humans, and they call their world Earth. One of the council members leaned forward. Class 3? That means they barely have space travel. Correct, the Admiral replied. Our scouts report they use chemical rockets and primitive electronics. They have not even established permanent colonies on other worlds in their system. Most importantly, they spend much of their time fighting wars among themselves. The hologram zoomed in to show Earth in detail. Blue oceans covered most of the planet's surface. Green and brown landmasses stretched across the globe. White clouds swirled in the atmosphere. The planet has everything we need. Admiral Zex Thara continued. Vast amounts of fresh water, which several of our member worlds desperately require. Rich mineral deposits, including rare elements needed for our advanced technologies, and the location is perfect for a military base to control this entire sector. Commander Thys of the Zephyrian Consortium studied the data. What is their population? Approximately 8 billion individuals, spread across 7 major landmasses. They are divided into nearly 200 separate political groups, many of which are actively hostile to each other. The council members exchanged knowing looks. A divided enemy was a weak enemy. Civilizations that could not unite were never able to mount effective resistance against the hegemony. What about their technology level? Asked General Mortuk from the Vraxian Empire. Admiral Zex Thara smiled. They have just begun launching small satellites into orbit around their planet. Their most advanced spacecraft can barely reach their single natural moon. They use radio waves for communication and still burn fossil fuels for most of their energy needs. How primitive, muttered Counselor Vex. Do they even have energy weapons? They use kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives for warfare. No energy shields, no plasma cannons, no gravitational manipulation. Their largest weapons use nuclear fission, which we abandoned 5,000 years ago. The Admiral manipulated the hologram to show human cities. Tall buildings stretched toward the sky, but compared to the massive crystal spires and floating cities of hegemony worlds, they looked like primitive settlements. Their population centers are concentrated and undefended, Admiral Zex Thara explained. They have no orbital defense platforms, no shield generators, and no early warning systems that could detect our approach from beyond their solar system. High Counselor Zirian, the senior member from the ancient Altarian race, spoke slowly. What resources would be required for conquest? Standard Protocol 7 should be more than sufficient. I recommend 3 battle fleets, which represents significant overkill for a target of this level. We could likely succeed with a single fleet, but the Council has always preferred overwhelming force to minimize hegemony casualties. Protocol 7 was the standard procedure for conquering primitive worlds. First, the battle fleets would establish orbital control, eliminating any spacecraft or satellites the target civilization possessed. Then, massive energy bombardments would destroy major population centers and military installations. Finally, ground forces would land to secure valuable resources and establish hegemony control over the surviving population. Timeline? Asked Commander Thys. 6 standard months for fleet preparation and transit. The actual conquest phase should take no more than 3 days. Complete pacification, and the establishment of mining operations within 1 standard year. General Mortuk nodded approvingly. Efficient. What about the primitive inhabitants? Labor potential? Admiral Zex Thara consulted his datapad. Humans appear physically robust and adaptable to various environments. Intelligence estimates suggest they could serve adequately as manual laborers for resource extraction, though their tendency toward internal conflict may require additional oversight. The usual slave collars should keep them manageable, commented Counselor Vex dismissively. High Counselor Zirion raised one clawed hand. Are there any potential complications we should consider? None, Counselor. This is a textbook expansion target. The humans possess no technology that could threaten our forces, no allies who might come to their aid, and no resources to mount a prolonged resistance. Their primitive weapons cannot penetrate our shields, and their chemical rockets cannot catch our ships. The Admiral touched another control, and the hologram showed human military forces. Soldiers carrying small firearms, vehicles that moved on wheels or tracks, and aircraft that used jet engines and metal wings. As you can see, their military technology is laughably outdated. They still use metal projectiles fired from chemical explosives. Their vehicles require physical contact with the ground. Their aircraft cannot even reach orbital altitude. What about their leadership structure? Inquired General Mortuk. Fragmented and chaotic. No central government. No unified command structure. Each political group maintains its own military forces. Many of these groups are actively engaged in warfare against each other. We expect minimal coordination in any resistance efforts. High Counselor Zirion studied the display for several long moments. The chamber remained silent, while the senior counselor considered the proposal. Finally, he spoke. The expansion into this sector has been planned for some time. These humans appear to present no significant obstacles to our objectives. Admiral Zexthara, you have authorization to proceed with Protocol 7. Thank you, High Counselor. I will begin fleet mobilization immediately. As the council members filed out of the chamber, Admiral Zexthara remained behind to study the tactical data one more time. Earth hung in the holographic display, blue and green, and completely helpless. In 6 months, it would be red on the star charts. Another conquest for the hegemony. He had conquered 43 worlds during his long career. This one would be the easiest yet. The Admiral deactivated the hologram and walked toward the door. Behind him, the display faded to black, leaving only empty space where Earth had been. Soon, that would be more accurate than he knew. Captain Veltar checked his instruments for the 3rd time as his scout ship approached the edge of the Sol system. Everything appeared normal. The yellow star burned steadily in the distance, exactly as their long-range surveys had predicted. 9 planets orbited the star, with the 3rd one being their target. Scanners show nothing unusual, reported his sensor officer. No deep space installations, no warning buoys, no patrol vessels. The system appears undefended. Captain Veltar nodded. This was exactly what they had expected from a primitive civilization. Most advanced species had defensive perimeters extending well beyond their home systems. The humans clearly lacked such capabilities. Take us closer, he ordered. I want detailed scans of their technology level. The scout ship moved deeper into the Sol system, its advanced sensors reaching out to catalog everything they encountered. At first, the readings confirmed their intelligence reports. A few ancient space probes drifted through the outer system, their simple designs and primitive electronics exactly what a Class 3 civilization would produce. But as they approached the inner planets, something started to feel wrong. Captain, the sensor officer called out, uncertainty in his voice. I'm detecting far more orbital activity than our reports indicated. Explain. There are hundreds of objects orbiting the 3rd planet. Our intelligence suggested they might have a few dozen primitive satellites, but I'm counting over 3,000 separate contacts. Captain Veltar frowned. Could they be debris? No, sir. Many of them are actively maneuvering. And there's something else. The sensor officer paused, rechecking his readings. There appears to be a large construction facility near their moon. Mass readings suggest it's at least 50 kilometers long. This was definitely not in their reports. Captain Veltar ordered his ship to move closer for a better look. As they approached Earth's orbital space, the scale of human activity became impossible to ignore. Massive solar arrays stretched across the vacuum, collecting energy from their star. Rotating habitats housed what appeared to be permanent populations. Manufacturing platforms processed raw materials that cargo ships delivered from the asteroid belt between the fourth and fifth planets. "How did our long-range surveys miss all this?" demanded Captain Veltar. Before his sensor officer could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. "Captain, we're being scanned." "By what?" "Unknown vessels approaching fast, very fast." On the main display, 3 sleek ships appeared from behind Earth's moon. They moved with impossible speed, covering the distance in minutes rather than hours. Their design was unlike anything in the hegemony's databases. Angular hulls seemed to bend light around them, and energy readings suggested technology far beyond what Class 3 civilizations should possess. "They're hailing us," reported the communications officer. "Audio only?" "No, sir. Full-spectrum communication using standard galactic protocols." Captain Veltar felt cold shock run down his spine. Primitive civilizations did not know galactic standard communication protocols. Those were established by ancient treaties between spacefaring races. No one taught them to species that had not achieved interstellar travel. "Put them through." A calm human voice filled the bridge. The words were spoken in perfect galactic standard, with no accent or mispronunciation. "Unknown vessels. You have entered Sol territorial space without authorization. State your business and intentions." Captain Veltar looked around his bridge. His crew stared back with the same confusion he felt. This was not how first contact with primitive species was supposed to proceed. Usually, there was fear, confusion, attempts to communicate in primitive languages. The humans were treating them like equals. "This is Captain Veltar of the Hegemony Scout Fleet. We are conducting a routine survey of this system." A pause. Then the human voice returned. But now there was something different in its tone. Not fear or confusion, but what sounded almost like amusement. "Captain Veltar, your ship's identification codes mark you as part of Admiral Zexthara's Advanced Reconnaissance Force. We've been expecting you." Rend. 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 The blood froze in Captain Veltar's veins. How could these primitive humans know about Admiral Zexthara? How could they know about Hegemony ship identification codes? Those were military secrets, protected by the highest levels of security. "I think there has been some mistake," he said carefully. "No mistake, Captain. Please maintain your current position while we decide how to proceed. Any attempt to leave Sol space or transmit messages beyond this system will be considered a hostile act." Captain Veltar looked at his tactical officer, who shook his head grimly. The human ships had positioned themselves in a perfect intercept formation, whatever technology they were using for propulsion. It was far superior to anything the scout ship possessed. "Sir," whispered his sensor officer, "I'm detecting massive energy readings from those ships. Their power output is off the charts." More contacts appeared on their scanners. Human vessels emerged from behind asteroids, from the far side of planets, and from what appeared to be empty space itself. Within minutes, the scout ship was surrounded by dozens of craft that should not have existed. "Captain," the communications officer said quietly, "they're scanning us with technology I don't recognize. It's penetrating our shields like they're not even there." The human voice spoke again. "Captain Veltar, we have completed our assessment of your vessel and crew. You will now be escorted to Lunar Station Alpha for debriefing. Please follow the designated course. Any deviation will result in your ship being disabled and towed." A course appeared on their navigation system, uploaded directly through their ship's security systems, as if they were not even protected. Captain Veltar realized with growing horror that the humans had complete access to their technology. "How are they doing this?" he asked his crew. No one had an answer. The escort vessels guided them toward the large construction facility near Earth's moon. As they grew closer, Captain Veltar could see that it was not just a space station, but a massive military complex. Weapons platforms covered its surface, and hundreds of warships moved in and out of its docking bays. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "those weapons are unlike anything in our database. The energy patterns suggest technology at least 2 centuries ahead of our most advanced systems." 1. Captain Veltar thought about the invasion fleet that would arrive in 6 months. 3 battle groups of the Hegemony's finest ships, expecting to face primitive humans with chemical rockets and kinetic weapons. Instead, they would find a civilization with technology that made their own ships look like ancient relics. Communications, he ordered. Prepare an emergency transmission to Admiral Zex Thara. Sir, the humans said they would consider that hostile. Captain Veltar looked at the massive human battle station growing larger on their screen. At this point, he said quietly, I think we're already in more trouble than they know. But when his communications officer tried to send the message, nothing happened. Their transmitters were completely blocked by some kind of interference field. The humans were not just intercepting their messages, they were preventing any messages from being sent at all. For the first time in his long military career, Captain Veltar began to suspect that the hegemony had made a terrible mistake. They had come to scout a primitive world, and instead found something that defied all their expectations. As their ship was guided into the docking bay, Captain Veltar wondered if Admiral Zex Thara would ever learn what had really happened to his scout fleet, and he wondered if anyone would be left alive to warn the invasion force about what was really waiting for them in Sol space. Admiral Zex Thara stood on the bridge of his flagship as the three massive battle fleets prepared to jump into the Sol system. Around him, the finest warships in the galaxy hung in space like deadly stars. Each fleet contained enough firepower to destroy entire worlds. All ships report ready for the final jump, his communications officer announced. The Admiral nodded with satisfaction. After losing contact with Captain Veltar's scout ships 3 weeks ago, he had accelerated the invasion timeline. Scout ships sometimes suffered equipment failures or encountered natural phenomena that prevented communication. It happened rarely, but it happened. Begin the jump sequence, he ordered. Just as the fleet engines began spinning up for the transition to faster-than-light travel, every communication system in the galaxy suddenly activated at once. Emergency priority signals overrode all other transmissions on every world, every ship, and every space station across known space. The message was simple, broadcast in perfect galactic standard, with crystal-clear audio quality. To whom it may concern, the Sol system is hereby declared a restricted military zone under the authority of the Terran Defense Pact. Unauthorized vessels will be engaged without warning. This notification is submitted in accordance with Galactic Accord 847b, Article 12, Subsection 4, effective immediately. Admiral Sarah Chen, Commander, Sol Defense Fleet. Admiral Zex Thara stared at the communication display in stunned silence. Around him, his bridge crew looked confused and frightened. The message had appeared simultaneously on every screen, every communication device, and every data terminal in the fleet. Sir, his communications officer said weakly, this message is being broadcast across the entire galaxy. Every world, every station, every ship is receiving it. But Admiral Zex Thara was not thinking about the technical impossibility of such a widespread transmission. His mind was focused on something far more terrifying. Galactic Accord 847b. He had heard of it only in the most ancient historical texts. It was a treaty established by the elder races, the mysterious civilizations that had ruled the galaxy thousands of years before any current species had achieved spaceflight. The elders had vanished long ago, leaving behind only ruins and legends. Get me the archives, he ordered. I need everything we have on the Galactic Accords. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on thousands of worlds. Leaders who had never heard of Galactic Accord 847b were frantically searching ancient databases. What they found made their blood run cold. The Galactic Accords were not just old treaties. They were fundamental laws that predated every current government and every existing alliance. More importantly, they contained enforcement mechanisms that had been built into the basic infrastructure of galactic civilization. On the hegemony capital world, High Counselor Zarian stood before an emergency session of the full council. Ancient texts floated in holographic displays around the chamber, while scholars and historians tried to make sense of what was happening. The Accords give absolute authority to any signatory that can provide valid authentication codes, one scholar explained. These codes were thought to be lost when the elder races disappeared. But this message used those codes. Another council member said, our computers verified them automatically. The humans have legitimate legal authority under the oldest laws in the galaxy. Counselor Vex slammed his hand on the table. Impossible! These humans are primitives. They could not possibly have access to Elder Race technology or knowledge. High Counselor Zerion raised his hand for silence. Show me the analysis of the transmission. A new hologram appeared, displaying the technical details of the human message. The data made every council member step backward in shock. The transmission was sent simultaneously to every inhabited world in the galaxy, the scholar reported. That requires a communication network we do not possess. The signal passed through our most secure systems without any effort to block or decrypt it, and the authentication codes are not just valid, they are perfect. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Zexthara received similar reports from his intelligence officers. Sir, we've confirmed the authentication codes are genuine. The transmission came through channels that have been dormant for over 2,000 years. Channels we didn't even know existed. What does that mean? Demanded the Admiral. It means the humans have been connected to the Elder Race communication network this entire time. They've been watching us, listening to us, monitoring everything we do, and we never knew it. The full implications began to sink in across the galaxy. If the humans had access to Elder Race technology, that meant they were not a primitive Class 3 civilization. It meant they had been deliberately hiding their true capabilities, but the most terrifying realization was still to come. On the trade world of Nexus Prime, Commerce Director Thal was reviewing his records when he made a discovery that changed everything. He had been looking through employment files, trying to understand how the humans had infiltrated galactic society. Find everything, he ordered his staff. Every human you can identify in our records. What they found sent shockwaves across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Consortium's greatest breakthrough in quantum communications had come from Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a theoretical physicist from a minor outer rim world. Her credentials were perfect, her work was brilliant, and she had disappeared just before the humans revealed themselves. The Vraxian Empire's most successful military reforms had been based on recommendations from Colonel Marcus Thompson, an exchange officer from an allied system. His tactical innovations had revolutionized their army, and he too was gone. On world after world, in organization after organization, humans had been present, always in important positions, always contributing valuable knowledge, always perfectly integrated into galactic society, and always using false identities that were only now being exposed. They've been studying us, Admiral Zexthara realized as reports poured in from across the galaxy. For decades, maybe centuries, they know everything about us. Our technology, our tactics, our weaknesses, our secrets, everything. His tactical officer looked up from his analysis station. Sir, if they've been observing our military operations, they'll know exactly how we plan to attack them. Admiral Zexthara felt the weight of the situation crushing down on him. He had 3 battle fleets positioned to invade what he thought was a primitive world. Instead, he was about to attack a civilization that had been infiltrating and studying the galaxy for longer than anyone knew. A civilization with access to Elder Race technology. A civilization that knew more about the hegemony's capabilities than the hegemony knew about itself. Communications, he ordered, his voice heavy with dread. Send a message to all fleet commanders. Operation is suspended pending further intelligence assessment. But even as he gave the order, Admiral Zexthara knew it was too late. The humans had been planning for this moment for a very long time. They had studied every ship, every weapon, every tactic the hegemony possessed. And now they were ready to show the galaxy exactly what humanity was truly capable of. The message had done more than declare Sol space off limits. It had announced to the entire galaxy that everything they thought they knew about the universe was wrong. And the humans had been patiently waiting for this moment to prove it. The emergency session of the Hegemony Security Council had been going on for 6 hours. Around the massive conference table, intelligence directors from every member world presented increasingly disturbing reports about human infiltration. The Altarian Defense Academy. Director Mixtall announced, his voice shaking. For the past 15 years, They've had a guest lecturer named Professor David Walsh. He taught advanced tactical theory and strategic planning to our highest-ranking officers. High Counselor Zirion's ancient face showed no emotion, but his clawed hands gripped the table edge. Continue. Professor Walsh specialized in multi-fleet coordination and deep space warfare tactics. His courses were considered essential for promotion to admiral rank. Over 3,000 of our senior officers studied under him. And his credentials? Perfect documentation from the University of New Geneva, which we now know is on Earth. We verified everything through their academic network, which we thought was managed by the Rigelian Education Collective. Director Mixtel paused, looking at his datapad with obvious distress. The Rigelian Education Collective has no record of managing any such network. The humans have been operating a completely false academic system for decades, and we never questioned it. Similar reports came from every member world. Intelligence Director Velshan of the Krillian Empire had discovered Dr. Maria Santos, who had been studying Krillian biology and psychology for 8 years, as part of a cultural exchange program. Her research into Krillian fear responses and decision-making patterns was so advanced that it had been classified at the highest levels. She knew more about how we think than our own psychologists, Director Velshan reported. Her work formed the basis of our current military training programs. We literally taught our soldiers using research methods developed by humans. The Zephyrian Consortium's intelligence chief brought even worse news. We found evidence of human involvement in our weapons development programs. Chief Engineer Lisa Park worked on our plasma cannon designs for 6 years. The improvements she suggested increased our weapons efficiency by 30%. Meaning what? Demanded General Mortuk. Meaning the humans know exactly how our weapons work, how much power they consume, how long they take to recharge, and what their maximum range is. They helped design them. Counselor Vex leaned forward. How is that possible? Our weapons labs have the highest security in the galaxy. Engineer Park had perfect clearance credentials. Her background checks were flawless. She was recommended by colleagues who had worked with her for years. We had no reason to doubt her. Because those colleagues were probably humans too, High Counselor Zarian said grimly. The pattern was becoming clear across the galaxy. Humans had not just infiltrated random organizations. They had systematically embedded themselves in the most critical institutions of every major civilization. Military academies, weapons research facilities, communication networks, diplomatic services, and economic planning departments. Always in positions where they could observe, learn, and influence without being noticed. Admiral Zex Thera received updates from his flagship as his officers compiled intelligence from across the galaxy. Each report made the situation seem more hopeless. Sir, his intelligence chief reported, we've identified at least 40 humans who held positions in hegemony military facilities over the past 20 years. They've been involved in ship design, tactical planning, weapons development, and strategic analysis. Do we have any military secrets left? Unknown, sir. Based on the positions they held and the access they had, we must assume they know everything about our capabilities. The tactical officer looked up from his workstation. Sir, I've been analyzing our battle plans for the Sol invasion. If the humans have detailed knowledge of our ship capabilities, they could predict our every move. Admiral Zex Thera walked to the main display, where the 3 battle fleets hung in space, waiting for orders. 150 of the galaxy's most advanced warships, representing the combined might of the hegemony's greatest civilizations. Ships that had been designed with human input. Ships whose tactical systems had been developed with human advice. Ships whose capabilities were completely known to the enemy they were supposed to surprise. Sir, his communications officer called out. We're receiving a transmission from Sol Space. From Captain Veltar's scouts? No, sir. This is from the humans. They're requesting permission to speak with you directly. Admiral Zex Thara felt a chill run down his spine. Put them through. The voice that came through the speakers was calm, professional, and spoke perfect military, Krillian, down to the formal command protocols that were never taught to outsiders. Admiral Zex Thara, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Sol Defense Fleet. I believe we need to talk. Admiral Chen. Zexthara replied carefully. I was under the impression that your species had no formal military rank structure. The Zexthara replied. On star. Under the implicitor. Under the implicitor. We have many things that were not in your intelligence reports, Admiral, including detailed knowledge of your current tactical situation. On cue, a new display appeared on every screen in the Hegemony fleet. It showed the exact positions of all 150 ships, their current power levels, weapons status, and crew complements. Information that should have been impossible for anyone outside the fleet to know. As you can see, Admiral Chen continued, we've been monitoring your fleet since it left Hegemony space. We know the specifications of every ship, the training level of every crew, and the tactical doctrine you plan to employ. Admiral Zexthara looked around his bridge. His officers stared back with expressions of shock and fear. The humans were demonstrating complete intelligence, superiority. What do you want? He asked. To avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Your fleet represents some of the finest ships and crews in the galaxy. It would be a waste to destroy them in a battle you cannot win. You're very confident for a primitive species. There was a sound that might have been laughter. Admiral, we've been studying galactic civilization for over 200 years. We know more about the Hegemony's military capabilities than most of your own generals. We've observed your tactics, analyzed your weaknesses, and prepared for exactly this scenario. A new image appeared on the screens. It showed the Sol system, but not as Admiral Zexthara remembered it from the tactical briefings. Instead of a few primitive satellites and space stations, he saw a massive defensive network, weapons platforms that dwarfed anything in the Hegemony arsenal, ships that moved faster than his sensors could track, and energy readings that suggested technology centuries ahead of anything the galaxy currently possessed. This is what you would be attacking, Admiral Chen explained. We've had decades to prepare for your arrival. Every simulation we've run ends the same way. And how is that? Complete destruction of the attacking force within the first 6 hours. Admiral Zexthara studied the defensive installations around Earth. If the readings were accurate, each weapon platform had more firepower than his flagship. And there were hundreds of them. You could have prevented this invasion by revealing yourselves earlier, he said. Why let it proceed this far? Because we needed the galaxy to understand the truth. For too long, the great civilizations have believed that might makes right. That advanced technology gives them the authority to conquer and enslave less developed worlds. We wanted to show everyone what happens when the predators encounter something they didn't expect. The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Zexthara alone with his thoughts. Around him, his officers waited for orders that he wasn't sure how to give. They had come to conquer a primitive world and found themselves facing a civilization that had been studying them for centuries, a civilization that knew their every capability and had prepared defenses that made their mighty fleet look like toys. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Zexthara began to wonder if the Hegemony had finally encountered something it could not defeat. Admiral Zexthara made his decision at 1427 Galactic Standard Time. Despite everything he had learned about human capabilities, he could not simply retreat without attempting the mission. 3 battle fleets representing 12 civilizations were depending on him. The Hegemony Council expected results. All ships, he announced across the fleet communication network. Proceed with invasion protocol. Target the Sol system. The battle began exactly 6 minutes later. As the Hegemony fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, they found the human defense grid waiting for them. The massive weapons platforms that Admiral Chen had shown them were real, and they were powered up for combat. Sir, his tactical officer reported, I'm reading over 400 enemy contacts. Power levels are unprecedented. Admiral Zexthara watched his tactical display as human ships moved to intercept positions with impossible speed. Their vessels seemed to bend space around them, appearing in one location and instantly materializing somewhere else entirely. Open fire, he ordered. All ships, weapons free. The combined firepower of 150 Hegemony warships lit up space with energy beams, plasma bolts, and kinetic projectiles. It was enough destructive force to level continents. The human ships absorbed the attack without apparent damage. "Sir," his weapons officer called out in disbelief, "our shots are having no effect. Their shields are deflecting everything. Impossible. Nothing can stop that much concentrated fire." But even as he spoke, Admiral Hysteria could see the truth on his tactical screens. The human defense fleet was not just surviving the hegemony's best weapons. They were completely ignoring them. The human counterattack came 30 seconds later. Energy beams unlike anything in the hegemony's experience reached out from the human ships. They passed through the hegemony vessels' shields, as if the protective barriers did not exist. Engines shut down, weapons went offline, and life support systems failed across the fleet. "We're being boarded," came reports from ship after ship. Admiral Hysteria stared at his tactical display as boarding pods that had never appeared on his sensors somehow materialized inside hegemony ships. His communications were filled with confused reports from his captains. "They're inside our ship. But there's no hull breach. Our security forces can't stop them. They seem to know exactly where everything is. They're not trying to kill us. They're just disabling our systems." Within 2 hours, every ship in the hegemony fleet was dead in space. Not destroyed, but completely disabled. The human forces had demonstrated technology that could transport boarding parties through solid matter, weapons that ignored all known defensive measures, and tactical knowledge that allowed them to predict every hegemony move. Admiral Hysteria found himself sitting in a disabled ship, surrounded by human soldiers who had somehow appeared on his bridge without triggering any alarms. They were polite, professional, and completely in control. "Admiral," said the human commander, a woman who introduced herself as Captain Rodriguez. "Admiral Chen would like to speak with you." The conversation that followed changed galactic history. 3 months later, Admiral Hysteria sat in the same chamber where the invasion of Earth had been planned. But now, instead of hegemony council members, human representatives occupied many of the seats. The room had been transformed into the headquarters of something called the Galactic Coordination Council. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the central podium, addressing an assembly that included leaders from every major civilization in the galaxy. Her presentation was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "The problem," she explained, "is not that your civilizations are evil or aggressive. The problem is inefficiency." Holographic displays showed detailed analyses of galactic society that were staggeringly comprehensive. Trade routes that could be optimized to reduce resource conflicts. Territorial disputes that could be resolved through better resource allocation. Military expenditures that could be redirected to scientific research and infrastructure development. For example, Ambassador Vasquez continued, "The Krillian-Vraxian border conflict over the Deneb mining rights. Both civilizations need the rare minerals found there, but the constant military presence costs more than the mining operations generate. Meanwhile, the Altarian systems have similar mineral deposits that remain untapped because they lack the processing technology." The display showed a complex reorganization plan. Altarian mining rights traded for Krillian processing technology. With Vraxian transport networks linking the systems, all 3 civilizations would benefit more than they could from controlling the disputed territory alone. "We've analyzed every major conflict and resource shortage in the galaxy," Ambassador Vasquez announced. "In every case, cooperation produces better results than competition." High Counselor Zerion, now serving as Altarian representative to the new council, spoke carefully. "These projections assume perfect cooperation between species that have been enemies for centuries, which is why the transition will be gradual and voluntary," Ambassador Vasquez replied. "We're not imposing solutions. We're offering them. Any civilization can choose to maintain their current territorial arrangements and trade relationships. And if we do, then you continue as before. But our analyses suggest that civilizations that join the Coordination Council will achieve resource security, technological advancement, and population growth rates that far exceed current galactic averages." Admiral Hysteria listened to the discussions with fascination. The humans were not offering conquest or demanding surrender. They were presenting logical solutions to problems that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. Over the following months, The results spoke for themselves. Civilizations that joined the Coordination Council saw immediate improvements in resource allocation and conflict resolution. Trade flowed more efficiently. Research advanced faster through shared knowledge, and territorial disputes became obsolete as resource needs were met through cooperation. Within a year, every major civilization in the galaxy had requested membership in the new system. Admiral Zexthara now served as strategic coordinator for the Krillian sector, working directly with human planners to optimize military and civilian infrastructure. It was a position he had never imagined when he first planned to invade Earth. "I still don't understand," he said to Admiral Chen during one of their regular planning sessions. "Why did you wait so long to reveal yourselves? You could have prevented countless wars and conflicts." Admiral Chen smiled. "We had to wait until the galaxy was ready. If we had appeared as advanced aliens offering to solve your problems, how would you have reacted?" Admiral Zexthara thought about it. "We would have assumed you wanted something in return. We would have looked for hidden motives, secret agendas, attempts to control us." "Exactly. But when we appeared as the defenders of a world you were trying to conquer, we demonstrated that we could have destroyed your forces but chose not to. We showed that our priority was protection, not domination. And the infiltration? The centuries of observation? We had to understand you before we could help you. Every species has different needs, different motivations, different cultural values. Solutions that work for humans might not work for Krillians or Altarians. We needed to study galactic civilization from the inside to develop plans that would actually succeed." Admiral Zexthara nodded slowly. "So, the invasion was never really about conquering Earth?" "No," Admiral Chen agreed. "Earth was never the target. We were always hunting bigger prey." "Which was?" Admiral Chen gestured toward the window, where ships from dozens of species worked together on construction projects that would have been impossible under the old system. "The entire galaxy," she said. "We wanted to catch a whole civilization and show it a better way to live." As Admiral Zexthara watched Krillian engineers working alongside Vraxian technicians and Altarian scientists, he realized the humans had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. They had not conquered the galaxy through force. They had conquered it through patience, understanding, and the simple demonstration that cooperation worked better than conflict. The hunters had become the shepherds, and the galaxy was finally